Welcome to the Daily Share Justice Mode. I'm Yasmin Vasugian. Hey, Joey.
Hello, Yasmin, and I'm Joey Jackson. So good to be with you.
Good to see you, Joey. Up first, we have some major updates in the German Wings Flight 9525 crash story. First, Lufthansa says it knew that co-pilot Andreas Lubitz suffered from severe depression. The airline says it was told about his condition in 2009. Lufthansa said it has turned over all documents and communications to the Dusseldorf public prosecutor. Also, new reports that video from inside German Wings Flight 9525 has been recovered. According to French newspaper Bild, the video was found on a cell phone memory card. It is not clear who was shooting the video, if they were standing, if they were sitting, but the newspaper says at the end of the video, the plane jerks to the side when the plane hits the mountain, then more screams, then silence. The French magazine Paris Match says it is clear the passengers knew what was happening to them. In other news,
we want to make it clear that Indiana is open for business. We want to make it clear that Hoosier hospitality is not a slogan, it's our way of life.
And that, of course, is Indiana Governor Mike Pence, and he's trying to rehabilitate his state's image in a major way. We know it's taken quite a beating on Twitter and Facebook, to say the least. Now, Indiana's religious freedom law, well, it looks like it's going to be rewritten and rewritten soon. The governor who signed the bill into law says he's now sending it back to the state legislature. The law allows businesses to practice their religious beliefs, and individuals for that matter, but the LGBT community says it opens the door for discrimination, especially against their community. Indiana small business owner Kristen Cohn, she joins us now, and criminal defense attorney Brian Claypool. Now, Kristen, many big-name companies, have publicly bashed the law. And to name a few, let's talk about it. Angie's List, Apple, Salesforce. So, Kristen, as a small business owner, what effect has this law had on you and your business?
I feel as though this law tarnishes the reputation of any business in Indiana, and certainly we're concerned about the economic impact that will have on Indianapolis as a city and businesses growing their companies here, hosting conventions and events here. So we're very concerned about it.
Absolutely. And on your Twitter page, Kristen, you're advertising that you, of course, serve everyone. Now, tell us about the Open for Service campaign that's going on now.
The Open for Service campaign is a movement that was started about 3 or 4 weeks ago and is simply a way for businesses to advertise the fact that when someone walks through our door, they will not be discriminated against. It's sort of reinforcing what we've been doing for 15 years, welcoming everybody who walks through our doors, every visitor to Indianapolis, every resident of Indianapolis, and we certainly want to make it clear that everyone will continue to always be welcome at our business.
Absolutely, Kristen, and I'm sure you've heard the governor's statement. Governor Pence this morning, he had a press conference. He spoke about the law in detail and also talked about the fact that he'll fix the bill. Could you react to that? What can they do to make it better?
From what I understand, Governor Pence said that he would make sure that the bill did not allow business to discriminate, but he also continues to refuse to make our LGBT community a protected class in the state of Indiana. So I still think it's not enough.
I get that, absolutely. And I want to bring in Brian Claypool, exceptional criminal defense attorney, certainly a good friend. Brian, let me ask you, let's talk about the legalese and the necessity of this bill and what it does. I mean, give us your, understanding of why it's getting so savage. Don't 19 other states have a similar law? Doesn't the federal government have a law that's similar? Or maybe not?
Well, Joey, here's the big problem. In order to understand how to change the state law in Indiana to make it more clear, you need to look at the root of the problem, which was the federal law in 1993. Now, I've looked at it very carefully, and it's very, very broad. In the context of the federal law that Clinton signed in 1993, dealt with issues unrelated to discriminating against the gay community. It dealt with things like a tribal community that didn't want to pay federal taxes because of religious rights. It dealt with two gentlemen in Oregon who took vacation due to a religious belief, and then the state of Oregon didn't want to pay them unemployment benefits. That was the genesis of the law in 1993. Now what we're having happen is states like Indiana, 19 other states, they're trying to mirror that broad language from 93 and use it as a pretext or a launching board to allow businesses to discriminate against gay and lesbian folks. And what we need to do to eliminate this problem is easy. You make it clear in this new bill in Indiana and all the other 19 states that you can't just discriminate against gay folks because they're gay. In other words, you make it clear what is not allowed, and that the state has a compelling interest, like Kristen said, to allow the commerce to flow throughout the community. So you got to make the law more clear.
Brian,
Absolutely.
Kristen, there are people out there that do support this law the way that it is. I spoke to someone earlier. His name is Jason, and he talked about how this may open up a conversation that people may be uncomfortable having. Let's take a listen to that, and then we're going to talk about it afterwards.
Yeah, it begins a conversation. Obviously, language is everything, at least the starting place, when it comes to finding consensus among the people and also finding boundaries for the way we live with one another. So we have to get the terms out there. We have to get some boundaries of discussion out there, and this legislation is a foundation for that.
So, Kristen, you know, you first being a resident and a small business owner, is there a way to play devil's advocate here that we need to still have the conversation about retaining religious freedoms? Because ultimately, there are people that do have religious restrictions that they want to be able to exercise within their own communities and feel comfortable doing so.
You know, I'm not sure if I'm the right person to discuss, you know, religious freedoms and protections for our government.
Brian, let me switch to you,
Yeah.
Brian, on the issue of sexual orientation. Let's address that. I think one of the big concerns here was that Indiana does not protect people on the basis of sexual orientation. If legislation was passed along that regard, do you think that'll resolve the issue?
Yes, that would help. That would help solve the problem. But a lot of people have to understand, Joey, that just because there is this law in Indiana, there has to still be a court review. In other words, let's say a business comes in and says, well, I'm not going to bake that cake for the lesbian couple that's getting married. Well, if that couple files a lawsuit, the court has to do a balancing test. And what I was talking about earlier is the state then has to have a compelling interest to stop the bakery from doing that. And my argument is the compelling interest is twofold: to promote equality, that these folks are part of a protected class, and secondly, the compelling state interest is commerce. You're going to kill commerce throughout the country if you're going to allow these types of laws.
But quickly, and I know, Joey, I know we got to go to break, but quickly, isn't there a way to retain religious freedom along with also protecting civil rights of every single human being that deserves that protection?
That's the great question, Yasmin, and that's the balancing act that will have to be done moving forward, because this is having a devastating effect on the business community. And certainly we want people like Kristen Cohn's business and others like her who are doing so much for Indiana to prosper. But that's only going to happen if the legislature gets it right and becomes more inclusive so that everyone can buy in. Kristen Cohn, we appreciate you joining us so much. Brian Claypool, we know you're sticking around with Yasmin and myself, so thanks so much to you too. Okay? Coming up,